now we're heading to Germany, because next we're looking at a unit that has produced exceptional operators, but has also faced one of the most significant organizational crises of any Western Special Operations Force in recent years. Let's talk about the Germany's KSK. So I gave the Kommando Spezialkräfte a tier rating of a C+, and let me explain why. When people talk about European special operations, the conversation usually starts with the SAS or the SBS. But Germany has built one of the most capable military special operations organizations in Europe. The Kommando Spezialkräfte, better known as the KSK, is Germany's premier military special operations unit. Like many modern Western soft organizations, KSK was created after Germany recognized the capability gap. During the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, German citizens needed to be evacuated. Germany had to rely heavily on Allied Special Operations Forces because it lacked a dedicated military unit capable of conducting those types of strategic missions independently. That experience became a major catalyst for creating the KSK in 1996. Since then, they've developed into a highly capable special operations organization specializing in missions that conventional German forces simply aren't designed to perform. The KSK specializes in direct action, counterterrorism, hostage rescue, special reconnaissance, strategic reconnaissance, high-value target operations, military assistance, and personnel recovery. Like many organizations on this list, they've built around small teams capable of operating independently in hostile environments. Selection for KSK is regarded as one of the most difficult military selection processes in all of Europe. Candidates face long endurance events, navigation, stress inoculation, leadership evaluations, problem solving, psychological screening, and only a small percentage successfully complete the process. Those who are selected continue through an extensive training pipeline covering advanced weapons, close quarter battles, mountain warfare, airborne operations, medical training, communications, explosives, and specialized mission skills. And like every organization we've discussed, becoming operational takes years. One of KSK's biggest strengths is also their professionalism. Germany invests heavily in producing technically proficient operators. Their standards are extremely high. Another major strength is interoperability. KSK is trained heavily alongside NATO Special Operations Forces, particularly organizations from the United States, the United Kingdom, and other European allies. That interoperability has made them an effective partner during coalition operations. They're also extremely well trained in hostage rescue, reconnaissance, precision direct action, mountain operations, and special reconnaissance. Another advantage is Germany's engineering and technological expertise. Germany's defense industry capabilities contribute to excellent equipment and support for this unit. Now we get to one of the most difficult parts of the discussion. One of my ranking criteria is organizational stability, and unfortunately, the KSK has experienced significant institutional challenges over the past several years. Multiple investigations uncovered concerns involving extremist elements within portions of the organization. Those findings led to sweeping reforms, leadership changes, the disbandment of one company, increased oversight, and significant restructuring. And I want to be very clear, this does not mean KSK is an extremist organization. It means that German authorities identified serious issues involving a relatively small portion of the unit and responded with extensive reforms. From an organizational perspective, though, events like these matter. When an elite organization experiences years of investigations, restructuring, and leadership turnover, it affects morale, it affects recruiting, it affects institutional trust. These factors don't necessarily make operators less capable, but they absolutely become part of the evaluating health of the organization. Germany provides KSK with an excellent equipment and modern technology. However, like many allied nations, Germany simply doesn't possess the same level of defense spending or global special operations infrastructure as the United States does. That means fewer worldwide deployments, smaller intelligence architecture, and fewer dedicated national level resources than organizations operate inside the US JSOC ecosystem. Again, that's not a criticism. It's simply the reality of comparing countries with vastly different defense budgets and global responsibilities. KSK is unquestionably an elite special operations organization. Excellent section, excellent training, excellent operators, but the ranking system evaluates the organization as a whole. When I combine mission diversity, funding, institutional stability, strategic reach, authorities, combat experience, innovation, and organizational maturity, they settle into a C+ tier. And remember, we are comparing them against what I believe are the finest special operations organizations on the planet. One thing I hope people take away from this video is that organizations evolve. No elite unit is perfect forever. Some organizations improve, some decline, some go through difficult periods and emerge stronger because of the reforms they implement. I think KSK is one of those organizations. They've faced significant institutional challenges. They've addressed many of them, and today they remain one of Europe's premier military special operations forces. So far, we've discussed organizations that specialize in direct action, hostage rescue, unconventional warfare, special reconnaissance, air-ground integration. Now we're moving back to the maritime world. We're turning to the United Kingdom to talk about an organization that often lives in the shadow of the SAS. In reality, many people inside the special operations community consider them every bit as capable. Let's talk about the Special Boat Service. So I gave the British Special Boat Service, or the SBS, a tier rating of an A. If the SAS is the most famous British special operations organization, the SBS may be the most underestimated. One of the biggest misconceptions people have is that the SBS is somehow below the SAS. That's simply not true. The SBS is the Royal Navy's premier special operations unit, and alongside the SAS, forms the United Kingdom's national Tier 1 special operations capability. The relationship between the SAS and SBS is actually very similar to the relationship between Delta Force and Dev Group. Different origins, different historical specialties, different cultures, but both capable of executing the nation's highest priority special operations missions. If the operation is primarily maritime, that's a good chance the SBS is leading it. If it's inland, the SAS may take the lead. But in reality, there's significant overlap between the two organizations, and both have evolved into full spectrum Tier 1 units. The Special Boat Service, or the SBS, traces its roots back to the Second World War. Originally formed as the Special Boat Section and later the Special Boat Squadron, the unit specialized in maritime reconnaissance, coastal raids, sabotage, and intelligence gathering. Operating from kayaks, small boats, submarines, and other covert insertion methods, early SBS operators often worked deep behind enemy lines. Over the decades, the organization expanded far beyond its maritime roots. Today, the SBS conducts missions across land, sea, and air, while maintaining a world-class expertise in the maritime environment. The SBS specializes in maritime counterterrorism, hostage rescue, direct action, special reconnaissance, underwater operations, maritime interdiction, counterterrorism, intelligence support, and strategic raids. While maritime operations remain their hallmark, they're fully capable of conducting inland special operations alongside the SAS. One of the things that most people don't realize is the SBS and the SAS selection systems are closely connected. Historically, many SBS operators come from the Royal Marines, while the SAS traditionally recruit more heavily from the British Army. Today, personnel can come from across the UK Armed Forces. Candidates undergo one of the most demanding selection processes in the entire world: endurance marches, navigation, stress events, escape and evasion, resistance and interrogation, and extensive continuation training. After selection, SBS operators receive additional instruction in advanced maritime operations that few organizations anywhere in the world can even match. That includes combat diving, submarine operations, shipboarding, underwater infiltration, maritime reconnaissance. These capabilities remind one of the SBS's defining strengths. If I had to summarize the SBS in one phrase, it would be maritime mastery. There is probably no special operations organization outside of DevGru in the world with more institutional experience conducting maritime special operations. Their experience extends from combat diving to oil platform assaults, ship takedowns, submarine insertions, and amphibious reconnaissance. Another enormous strength is versatility. People sometimes think the SBS only operates on water. That's simply outdated thinking. Over the past several decades, the SBS has conducted extensive operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, and numerous other environments far removed from the sea. Like the SAS, they've become a truly global special operations organization. Another major advantage is institutional maturity. The SBS has spent decades refining its doctrine, leadership, and operational culture. That experience matters. Elite organizations aren't built overnight. They're built over generations. So why aren't they S tier? The answer is similar to the SAS. Their limiting factor isn't operator quality, it's the ecosystem, it's funding. The United Kingdom simply doesn't maintain the same defense budget, intelligence architecture, technological resources, or global support network available to the organizations inside the JSOC ecosystem. Organizations like Delta, DevGru, ISA, 24th STS operate within a national security structure that is extremely unique in the entire world. Another factor is the institutional stability. Like the SAS, the broader UK Special Forces enterprise has operated under increased public scrutiny in recent years following investigations into alleged misconduct during operations in Afghanistan. Again, I'm not judging thousands of professional operators based on allegations involving a relatively small number of individuals. I'm evaluating organizational health. When investigations, legal proceedings, leadership attention, and political scrutiny continue for years, they will inevitably influence trust between operators, commanders, and its own government. That relationship is essential for an elite organization, especially a tier 1 organization. One of the major themes throughout this video is that funding doesn't necessarily make better operators. It builds better organizations, better facilities, better technology, more training repetitions, greater research and development, more intelligence integration. The SBS is exceptionally well equipped, but compared to America's national mission units, they operate with fewer resources and a smaller intelligence ecosystem. That isn't a flaw. It's simply the reality of comparing the defense budgets of two completely different countries. If we were ranking maritime special operations alone, the SBS and Dev Group would be battling for the top position. But this is an overall organizational ranking when I evaluate. And the SBS earns an A tier. They're one of the finest military special operations organizations on Earth. They simply don't benefit from the same national level ecosystem available to America's tier 1 units. One thing I think is important is to emphasize that the SBS and the SAS should not be viewed as competitors. They're partners. Each evolved from different operational requirements. Each developed different specialties, and together they provide the United Kingdom with one of the most capable special operation enterprises in the world. Whether that mission begins underwater, on a ship, on a beach, or hundreds of miles inland, the SBS has repeatedly demonstrated that it belongs among the world's elite. We have now discussed two of Britain's premier special operations organizations. Now we're going back to the United States, because next we're looking at an organization that most people have never heard of, and yet it may have had a greater impact on modern special operations than almost any unit of its size. A unit that often finds the target long before Delta or Dev Group ever arrive. Let's talk about the Ranger Reconnaissance Company, or RRC. So I gave the Regimental Reconnaissance Company, or RRC, a tier rating of an A+. So before we continue, I want to quickly explain for people who may not know that RRC are essentially like your tier 1 level Rangers, kind of very equivalent to the tier 1 SEALs that DevGru has in comparison to the normal Navy SEALs. So RRC is a strategic reconnaissance and advanced force operations organization. Their main mission isn't necessarily kicking in doors. Their mission is making sure that somebody else knows exactly which doors to kick. The distinction is incredibly important. RRC has traditionally provided the Ranger Regiment at times and other national level organizations with capabilities involving advanced force operations, strategic reconnaissance, target development, sensitive reconnaissance, and intelligence collection. If you've watched enough of my ISA content, you probably have noticed a pattern. The organization that finds the target often becomes just as important as the organization that assaults it. The origins of RRC can be traced back to the Ranger Regiment's need for a dedicated reconnaissance capability capable of operating ahead of the conventional Ranger forces. Rather than simply gathering battlefield intelligence, RRC evolved into an organization capable of conducting extremely sensitive reconnaissance missions in support of strategic objectives. Because of the nature of their work, much of what they do remains classified. That makes them one of the least publicly understood organizations on this list. But what is publicly available paints a picture of a unit operating at an exceptionally high level. So RRC specializes in advanced force operations, strategic reconnaissance, special reconnaissance, target development, intelligence collection, surveillance, and operational preparation of the environment. This leads me into a question that I get quite a bit. What are advanced force operations? And honestly, it's one of these terms that I hear that people hear all the time without really understanding. Advanced Force Operations, or AFO, involve placing reconnaissance elements into an area before the main assault force arrives. Their job may include confirming the target, watching the target, building the intelligence picture, studying enemy routines, identifying escape routes, confirming friendly approaches, establishing communications, and sometimes they may spend days observing a target before anyone else ever even knows an operation is about to begin. When the assault force finally launches, it already knows almost everything it needs to know about the target, and that dramatically increases the probability of mission success. RRC recruits from within one of the most elite organizations already on this list, the Ranger Regiment. That means candidates have already demonstrated exceptional tactical ability before they are even considered. From there, the standard only increases. Operators are expected to master advanced reconnaissance, long-duration surveillance, navigation, communications, intelligence reporting, insertion techniques, observation, remaining undetected, and operating independently in denied environments. Unlike assault forces that may spend minutes on a target, RRC operators often measure success by remaining unseen for days. If I had to describe RRC, it would be discipline and preparation. Everything they do is designed to make everyone else's mission more successful. The better the reconnaissance, the better the intelligence, the better the assault. That's why I rank organizations like RRC so highly. People naturally focus on the people kicking in the door, but somebody had to determine which door, who was inside, what time they'd be there, how many guards were present, where reinforcements would come from. That's strategic value. Another enormous strength is integration. RRC has historically worked alongside organizations across the JSOC ecosystem. That level of interoperability allows them to contribute far beyond the Ranger Regiment itself. Finally, the professionalism, their culture, and their extremely high operational standards matter. One of my ranking categories is innovation. RRC scores very high here. Reconnaissance has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. Modern operators must integrate drones, advanced communications, ISR platforms, digital intelligence, GPS, denied navigation, real-time reporting, sophisticated surveillance equipment. Few organizations are better positioned to exploit these technologies than RRC. As warfare becomes increasingly intelligence-driven, organizations like RRC are going to become even more valuable. So you might be wondering why this American Special Operations Tier 1 organization did not make it into the S tiers, and it only made it into A+. And while I'll explain this later when I get into some of the other Tier 1 organizations that did make it into the S tier ranking, a lot of it comes down to the size and breadth of the organization. It also deals with the overall capability. Does this unit do its own independent national level operations? And does it even have something as its own organic aviation assets? And so all these are taken into factor, which is why RRC did not make it into the S tier. And I know a lot of people will compare RRC to ISA, and because they do, one primarily does with your clandestine, your covert operations, and RRC does primarily your tactical reconnaissance, but they do both bleed over into each other's main primary responsibilities. But they don't possess the same breadth of technical intelligence capabilities. They don't operate from the same global intelligence architecture, and they also don't have the same authorities associated with national level intelligence organizations. And again, this isn't a criticism. It's just simply recognizing that they have different missions and they are different sizes of these units. So why do they rank here? So this ranking is going to surprise a lot of people because some people just don't even know that RRC exists, or they just don't know it very well. But the popularity has nothing to do with their capability. And quite frankly, most of the organizations we've already discussed become significantly more effective because organizations like RRC exist. Finding the target is often harder than hitting the target, and that's why I believe they deserve an A+. One thing I hope people are beginning to notice is a bit of a theme here. These organizations that are climbing towards the top of this list, being the best shooter is not the only factor. They're the organizations that combine tactical capabilities, intelligence, technology, planning, and other operational excellence into one capability. That's where modern warfare is headed. Success increasingly belongs to the side that understands the battlefield first.